I swear, that was perhaps the most difficult experience of my life. Nevertheless, we did the 12-week movie. It's in the can. It can be seen. I have a copy of it. He has a copy of it, somebody. But don't go out of your way, you know. It wasn't a great movie.
60s. It screams late 60s, actually.
Yeah, I suppose it does. And I came back to Westinghouse, and they didn't fire me right away or anything like that. But when my contract ran out, I had a 3-year contract. They never renewed me, and I wasn't surprised. And I went from there. I went into acting. You know, in fact.
I wanted to touch on, if I could just interrupt, because it all ties in.
Yeah, because I can talk all night.
But before, I was going to bring up the fact that you were a newscaster, which I found unusual, because you were an actor first, then a newscaster, then went back and acted. But you also had, early in your career, I mean, you did, I guess you could say you broke a taboo, because you weren't, at the time, the stereotypical black character, but you had a nice run on the Phil Silver Show.
Sure.
As one of the cast.
And
it wasn't, you know, at the time it was still the 50s, and you know, it'd be like, man, I'm not, you know, it's like butler roles and, you know, black kid. And so, but you were just one of the crew, which I thought was great, because it was a nice run, a good show, people remember it. And, you know, and that had to be nice for you as a young actor, going, holy mackerel, I got a regular gig on a popular show.
The regularity of it was certainly welcome, but I've been an actor since 1953.
And that was still Silvers was.
And I've done Broadway, I've done television, I've done movies and stuff, and I've never had to do the kind of roles that you're talking about. The butler role, is not part of my thing.
Yeah, but that's why I think it's great, because
it's not that great. It just happens that you just don't do that.
Right, but it's also nice to find yourself, like I said, Phil Silver. You know, it's a regular gig. It's like, hey, cool,
sure.
Got a cast gig.
But the tribute doesn't go to me, it goes to Phil Silvers. If you want to know, could I tell you a little bit about the Phil Silvers thing?
Sure, I mean, we grew up watching it in reruns.
Yeah, well, back in the early 50s, you didn't see any black faces on television. The few that you might have seen were the kind of characters that, you know, there were the caricatures, the Willie Butler, that kind of stuff, right. And I was not the first who played an ordinary person, but I was among the first. And in fact, on the Phil Silver Show, most people don't know this, but there was a black actor ahead of me. They didn't get along. It was one of those things that just happens with people, and they were looking for a replacement for him, and I'm walking down the street, and I see an actor that I know. Hey, Terry, what are you doing? Hey, listen, you interested? You want to work on television? I said, sure. He said, listen, they're looking they want to recast the guy on the Phil Silver Show. I said, really? Yeah, I said, go up to CBS and talk to so-and-so. And I did, and I got on the show. So then there were 2 black actors on the show. One was P.J. Sidney. Do you remember P.J. Sidney? I don't know what happened to him, the poor guy. He was a nice guy. But anyway, he somehow didn't click with the people who, you know, things happen like that in any jurisdiction. And they had me in there to replace him. But then on top of that, I don't know if I'm talking too much. If I am, please just raise your hand.
I had it all in together.
But
only Pat has it. Only Pat. Poor Pat's looking at me, whispering, "I have a voice too. I know words."
Touche. All right. I'll get you. Yeah.
No. You're talking about Phil Silver, but I was just saying that it was great because at the time, you know, and it's good because by the time you did in the '60s and things started loosening up. And, you know, so, but that was early, and it was great. It was great to see just be regular.
Okay,
cast.
I can just tell you the little thing about Silvers.
Yeah.
The sponsor was J.P. Laurillard, whom I think are the sponsor. You hold this thing like this? Okay. J.P. Laurillard, I think, were the people who made Camel cigarettes. I should remember that. I can think of so many side stories, but we haven't got the time for that. We'll save that for next time. Nevertheless,
they're welcome to meet you at your table. You tell them stories all evening.
Sure. Listen, Camel cigarettes is a southern. They came out of the South, right? The South. They're somewhere down there, you know. Down there. So they weren't too keen on having black people on the show to begin with, and that was the fact that I and my predecessor were on the show was to the credit not only of Phil Silvers, but the producers. These particular guys, they would have gone to the mat over this issue. So what happened? We would shoot a show, and then, you know, I wasn't the star of the show, but neither was anybody else really, except Phil Silvers, right? So you had your bits, you had your scenes, you had your little funny things, and when they did a commercial, everything was live in those days. Live. We shot live, in other words, we shot the show in a live manner. We'd have an audience come in and sit down like you guys, and we'd play the show live in front of you guys and film the show. And that was the show that went on the air, except we did it 3 times to get it kind of perfect, right? So we'd have 3 different audiences come in and see 3 different performances, run-throughs of the show, and that was that, right? So, what the hell was I saying?
About sponsors on the.
Thank you. Yeah. So, what they would do is when they did the commercials, they did the commercials in a live manner, and I remember they would line up the platoon, meaning all the guys and me, and they would put me on the end, and you can already anticipate what I'm going to say, right? They would frame me out of the commercials. Because they had the last word over the commercials. They might not have had the last word over the show, but the commercials were ours, kind of stuff. Who cares? I didn't care. Nobody really cared. They didn't care. The other actors, nobody smoked Camels at the time. They'd buy their other cigarettes, Winston or whatever, and break the tip off, and just so the sponsor guys wouldn't see them smoking something other than Camels. But nevertheless, that was the kind of an atmosphere it was. It was, and everybody, I mean, I got to tell you, everybody to a man and to a woman, there were very few. We all got along so wonderfully well. It was such a pleasure, and I can't think of anything I've enjoyed since. And that's 60 years ago, 60-something years ago. So let me stop right there.
Okay.
And they all live happily ever after.
So, question for Pat Cardi.
Sure. Even I have one.
Can I ask one?
Yeah, go for it.
Thank you. So, in knowing that you were one of the co-founders of MoviePhone, I was planning on asking you a question about your thoughts on MoviePass, and then come to find out this past week that MoviePass and MoviePhone are merging. And
It's news to me.
oh, well, the Wall Street Journal just on Thursday ran an article that they were merging. So one was buying the other.
I stopped paying attention to MoviePhone in 1988.
So being one of the founders of that company and then seeing these things develop over time up to the present MoviePass, how do you feel the internet and these technologies has affected movie going and ticket sales, etc.?
That sounds like an intelligent question. I wouldn't have an answer for something like that.
You're one of the creators of MoviePhone, which is a
created
trailblazing thing. You must have some thoughts.
I was doing, well, let me just tell you how I got involved. I was doing an industrial film for a company that provided interactive voice response for telephone calls. In other words, you'd see a commercial, it would say, to find out where the dealer is near you, call 1-800, whatever the number was. And then when you called that number using your touch-tone phone, they'd ask for your zip code, you'd put that in, and they instantly could tell you where the nearest dealer was. And it was a robot voice, you know, it was something recorded into the computer. And when I saw that's what I was making a video about, I instantly came up with the idea for MoviePhone. And I brought in as my partners the young man who actually introduced me to that company, whose name was Russ Leatherman, who you know as "Hello and welcome to MoviePhone." And I brought him in, and then the president and vice president of Topper, which was the company doing the interactive voice response. And they actually quit their jobs to do this application because they thought it was such a great thing. So we worked together on it for about 1.5 years and got the thing happening. We got Topper involved to provide the technical background. And my favorite price for things is free. My partners and I argued over the fact that they want it to be a 976 number, one that you can charge people $1 a call, you know, to call up and find out, you know, where their favorite movie's playing. And being that my favorite price was free and theirs was $1, we ended up parting ways. But they found out pretty soon that it wasn't going to fly as a 97600. And also, I had already arranged to sell the demographics that we were collecting from the phone calls. We had like 26 points of demographics. We sold back to the distributors, and they paid a fortune for that information over the years, as I find out now. Unfortunately, I more or less got pushed out of the company. I didn't really leave of my own accord. I thought we had problems that we could work out. They incorporated the company without me, and I guess 5 or 6 years later, sold it for $480 million. So I'm still waiting for my part. Anyway, yeah, lawsuits and all that, and nothing came out of it.
Well, if I can back up, I don't know, a raging buttload of years to talk about your acting career and not movie film. Well, why did you go to movie film without talking about his movies? Huh?
Oh, just because I thought we might be running short on time because you have another Q&A in 15
we got a few
minutes.
more minutes, but Pat, we didn't give him a chance to speak, and he worked with William Castle, and that's what I wanted to talk about. Knowing you were such a busy, child actor, you did popular TV at the time, commercials, feature films, and you were in what we did, like we talked about it for a minute the other day, what I consider pretty much like William Castle's last William Castle movie. He did a couple after that, and I didn't think they were quite on the mark, and then he did that weird movie Shanks, but the last film I thought was a William Castle film in that genre that kind of started with, late 50s with House on Haunted Hill was Let's Kill Uncle. And you were...
Has anybody seen that? Let's Kill Uncle?
Yeah, what was that like, working with Castle in that film? Because it's a fun film.
Do you guys know who William Castle was?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. William Castle was a great guy. He was like having your favorite uncle to work with on your set every day. This guy, he must have at the beginning of the show, he had asked me, he said, what do you like to do? What do you do? And I said, well, I live in Hollywood and I go to Burt Wheeler's magic shop all the time. And so he apparently he sent somebody over, or he went over to Burt Wheeler's and he bought up a whole bunch of stuff, and every day he'd give me a different gift. He'd go, hey, try this out. And then he'd sit down with me and play with it, and make invisible ink, the little ring tricks, all kinds of stuff. So, and he was just a nice guy on the set. He loved Mary and I. My co-star in the film was Mary Badham. Mary Badham was Scout Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird, for those of you who know what that is. She was nominated for an Oscar, so I was a little bit intimidated to work with her, but she was great. We ended up being lifelong friends too. But William Castle he was a good director. He knew what he wanted. He was also the producer of the film.
Well, he made so many things. He started, he made pirate movies and sword and sandal movies, and then hit big on the horror and the gimmick movies. And
right.
He did family films and comedies. Right. He was just an all-around guy who wanted to keep working in the business.
Right. He was a contract director for Columbia, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, of course, we watched Horror High, and I wanted to touch on that because that was pretty much your last feature film. And it's a good one. Like I said, it's become a cult film. But what made you, after that, what made you move on to other things and quit acting in your early 20s?
Okay. The reason I ended up in Horror High was because Michael Landon did I Was a Teenage Werewolf, and I was a teenage Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And I thought, well, if that could do what it did for Michael Landon, who am I to turn this down? And when we landed in Dallas, I said, so how much is the budget on this? And he goes, around under $100,000. I said, really? I said, how are we going to make a film for that? He goes, we're shooting it in 16 millimeter. And I was like, okay, this is the end. I've reached the crossroads. And after that, I got really small parts, and I got them because I would call the casting director, who I'd known as a child, and say, hey, I really need to, do something. You got anything? And I'd get some parts. So the part I got in Battle for the Planet of the Apes was a result of me calling the casting director, who'd known me as a child, and me saying, hey, can you just, put the makeup on me? I haven't worked in a while, and I'd like to, have a part. And he actually put me on the film for a month, even though I was only in 2 scenes. So it was a great payday. But between getting married and getting divorced and having to deal with my dad, who was my manager, finally one day I just said, that's the end of that, and stopped doing it.
But you never really left the business, you just went on to do other things.
I'll tell you what, this is child actor syndrome, okay? Yeah. I call myself a recovering child actor. I'm only 67. I still have time. The thing is, what was the question?
Well, you just went on to do other,
Oh, yeah.
You never really left the
Yeah,
beginning.
okay,
You just
so-
did other things.
Some child actors moved on to drinking alcohol, taking drugs, and doing terrible things to themselves. But in addition to that, I took a job cleaning sound stages. And so from acting in Horror High, I mean, literally the following January, I was worked in backlot craft service. And I did that for 10 years, which is not working like doing the coffee and the donuts. It's like labor that, we clean the back lot. We move the sets from the scene dock to the sound stage. The grips only take it over once it's on the sound stage. We loaded the trucks when they were taking sets to locations. All kinds of weird jobs. When it rained, we filled the sandbags and made sure the water went in the right direction. And so, yeah, in addition to drugs and alcohol, I was doing that. And I was able to support a wife and a child doing that for 10 years. And eventually cleaned up and started writing, and got my story credit on Quincy television show. I wrote stories for Fantasy Island. I did research for both of those shows, and accidentally got hired to write an infomercial, and then spent the next 20 years producing, writing, and directing infomercials.
Yeah, but it just morphed into
you just
constant.
did
I
it.
had a friend from Cleveland, and at my first show almost 20 years ago, he made an indie film. We screened it here. His name is Kenny Yeagle, and he made a film called Stop It, You're Killing Me, which was a little comedy. But then he got an opportunity to go to Hollywood and work as a grip, which is a cable slinger, guy who runs cables. Now he's been out there working steady as that, but he's written 18 scripts that have been produced, and Austin was just in one of them. Austin was in a movie called Give Till It Hurts, about two kids. Their mother gave away their inheritance to a televangelist, which I believe is Austin, and they want it back. So it's sort of a comedy of errors about them wanting to get their money back from a televangelist. And the script was written by my cable slinging friend that grew up here in Cleveland. So, and it was like his 17th or 18th script he sold. So
Yeah.
every time I talk to him, I'm like, dude, I'm tired of seeing your name and stuff.
When I would work backstage, because I did do some craft service jobs where I was the donut man and coffee and sweeping the soundstage. A common joke amongst us was as they were walking in to get their coffee, you'd look at them and go, "So how's the screenplay coming along?" Whether you knew they were writing one or not. Sometimes they'd stop for a second and go, "Did we talk about that? Tell me about it. How's it coming?" And they'd tell you. Everybody on the set had something else they were trying to do. And most of the time it was they wanted to direct films, or they were writing films, or they wanted to become an actor.
Well, as I talked to my friend Ken, I'll just bring him up because I'm kind of proud of him. But he said, I never wrote a giant Hollywood production. I'd write these little comedies, these horror films, and then I'd show, and then someone would buy them and produce them, and I got them made. And he goes, and he goes, they wind up on late night cable TV, and people see them, and I'm amazed. And I never know. I look and I see his name, and I'll be, damn. And I call him up, and I'm like, he doesn't brag about it or call and say, hey, I got another one, But he's just like, and he got married, raised some kids, and he's like, man, it's nice because I go to work regular and lay cable, and then every once in a while I get to go on vacation because I sell a script. The family eats. So yeah, so it's just weird. I just wanted to point out how things could happen and snowball into and it is ultimately. I guess everybody's goal in life is by the time you reach the end of it, you hope you have more happy days than sad ones.
Exactly. I thought it was over, and it snowballed, and now I'm here.
Yeah, I mean, this is typical of everything. I don't know how you're topping during this single race.
This guy invited me to come, and I thank him so much because I've enjoyed being here. I know I'll enjoy the rest of it. I haven't done shows like this, so it's really cool.
We are kind of slowly running out of time, but I do invite you guys to go to the tables because we never brought up Battlestar Galactica with Terry. I mean, it was such a show that became a cult favorite. He had a regular gig on McCloud with Dennis Weaver, which was a show I grew up watching. And I mean, sneak into the office, hit IMDb, and think of a real question,
And these guys will think
Yeah,
you're
their
intelligent
combined filmographies, hundreds of movies.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
lots to
These
talk
guys will
about.
think, holy shit, these guys are smart. So go do that. You'll make me look better that way. But I do want to wrap things up. If you have a last word to say, if not, we invite you to go back to their table. That's what they're here for. Make them feel special. You guys always make me look good. Give my guests a hand right now, and while you're at it, give yourself a little extra applause.